Hello again, you're watching Everard Junction, and today is another part of the Building a Model Railway series. As you can see before you, this part is going to focus heavily on road vehicles, which is something I haven't really touched on very much. Now, road vehicles, a lot of people just get them straight out of the box, put them straight on the layout and leave it at that. But there's a huge amount that you can do, all kinds of bits and pieces that you can personalise on the vehicles and make them individual, make them your own for your own layout. So I'll be going through various things, starting off with relatively simple stuff like just generally weathering the cars, right up to more serious stuff like repainting various panels and adding figures and various other bits and pieces that we'll get onto later. So you can see there's a whole range of road vehicles in front of you, including some new additions that I've bought recently, particularly the Mark II Astra, the Volvo 245 Estate, the Sierra RS Cosworth and the Mark III Ford Transit. That's also being used to complement some older cars such as the Rover P6, Ford Granada and Land Rover Series 2. So you can really create a nice sort of cross-section of vehicles and really give the layout that period feel. Certainly these days with all these new vehicles from Oxford Diecast. Okay, so to get started, the first thing you're going to need to do is to take the vehicle apart, whatever vehicle that may be. You're best to take it apart before you start weathering it and making various changes. It's just a lot easier to get to, and the most important thing that you want to look after is the vehicle's glazing. You want to get that out more than anything else. So you're going to have to take the car apart, and on Oxford Diecast cars most of it is held together with screws or rivets. And the rivets, they'll have to be drilled out. The screws, easy, you can just take those out with a screwdriver. It really can be quite tricky. On some of the cars the rivets can be hidden under bits and pieces, but most of the time it's fairly accessible and you can have the cars apart in a matter of minutes. So with all the cars taken apart, I tend to keep all of the bits and pieces together on the chassis of the vehicle, and then obviously the shells I'll keep separate so I can do the painting, weathering and alterations. One of the biggest reasons why I take these cars apart and do the various effects is because the details, the little painted details on the cars are printed on. Now the car is a 3D object, so the printing doesn't cover everything and it can be a little sloppy, as you can see with the placement of the window seals and various bits of chrome on each car. They're also missing various bits, such as the door cappings on the Ford Granada. They are missing entirely. And you can see on the Astra, as you look over the edge onto the top of the door, there is a big area of white that should be the rubber door capping or weather seal to keep the rain out. So one of the best things you can do is to take these apart and just with paint or a decent quality black pen if you prefer, to go around all the various bits of the car that should be rubber and touch them in. And it will make a massive difference to the car. It will give it a level of depth that it didn't have before, and it will look more convincing when it's placed on the layout. Some of the cars, like the Volvo, have a piece of chrome along the top of the doors that is intertwined with the weather strip, and it's usually a one-piece part on the real car. So I need to touch in the black rubber, being careful not to overpaint onto the chrome pieces. So again, you've got to keep a nice steady hand, take your time, and make sure that you wipe off any excess paint that gets perhaps where it shouldn't do. And if the worst happens, I'm using acrylic paint, so it does just rub off with a little bit of thinners. But if you need to, you can touch in various bits of chrome with just a little blob of silver paint. So here you can see I'm just adding the rubber strips on the Volvo where they should be, and straight away it gives the car a look of depth, and it just makes it look a bit more convincing than it did when it came out of the box. Okay, so on the models that are getting weathered, I'm going to matte varnish them. I use Rail Match or Phoenix Precision, both are very good and give a nice finish, and I'll be doing that on all the cars that are not getting a repaint. These are just going to be weathered. So the next thing to do before I actually varnish any of these is to just clean the dust off of the models, get any greasy fingerprints off and bits of dirt, because that'll show through in the paint and you'll get an uneven finish. So just use a damp cloth and just wipe off any of those contaminants. And as you can see, it's also worth, if you can, to wear some gloves of some description, because the grease in your fingers will get back onto the cars as you handle them. I much prefer to wear a pair of gloves, and then you avoid getting any contaminants on the car, and you can get a nice finish when you varnish it. The mark-free Transits have some clear plastic covers over the headlamps, and it's important that you don't get any of the matte varnish onto these, because it will fog up the plastic. This is what plastic looks like when you spray it with matte varnish. You can see it goes all cloudy and horrible. So I use some Humbrol Mascal to mask that up, which you've seen me use in the past. Just apply it with a brush, do the airbrushing, and it should just peel straight off when you're finished. And then put the cars on various plinths, just so you can spin them around without touching them. I typically use the cars boxes that they come in. Those are quite useful. They're also useful for putting all kinds of odds and ends in. And I'll just simply airbrush the matte varnish onto the vans and the cars, and it'll just take away that very toy-like shine that you get from them. Some of the cars are having a full repaint, so I take off absolutely everything on them that is plastic and then dunk them in some Nitromors to strip the metal shells back to bare metal and remove all the paint. I do that because the paint on these cars is quite thick and you'd lose a lot of the detail if you just painted straight over them. So there you can see a small group of cars that have been stripped. It takes about 10 minutes for each shell. Just leave it fully immersed in the Nitromors, and it will do its stuff and take the paint off quite nicely. When it comes to painting the cars, it's nice to try and get a bit creative and paint them in some different colours that you can't get them in from the shops. And I try and paint them in period colours that they would have been sold in when they were new. So the Fords, I tend to go for a sort of light blue. It's quite a common colour I'll go for. And then the Volvo, I would go for red, common colour again to see the Volvos. And the Minis, yellow, orange, green, all kinds of colours you can paint those in. Do a little bit of research, might be handy to just see what sort of colours they were when they were new. You've got a choice when it comes to what type of paint you use. You can typically use acrylic or you can use enamel, and there are benefits for either way. I mean, the acrylic is much faster and it doesn't cause as much damage to your lungs if you don't wear a mask. But I prefer the finish that you get with the enamel paints. That tend to get a much nicer finish on the surface of the model. And of course, it goes without saying that you should give the paint a damn good stir before you use it. This is particularly important on enamel paint, as the colour can vary significantly if you don't actually stir it. So with the bare shell wiped clean of any contaminants, I place it on a plinth and again airbrush it with my trusty airbrush. And this Mini Clubman is going to be painted yellow, which was a nice common colour, and it's a bit different. You don't tend to buy too many model vehicles in yellow, so it just makes the car stand out. And when you look at the layout or someone else looks at the layout, they see these cars in different colours that they're not familiar with. They know, oh, that car's had some work, that's had some detailing done to it, that's been repainted or whatever. Just makes things look a bit more interesting. So while the cars that I've just repainted dry off, leave them to dry for a good 24 hours before we go any further with those, I'm going to move on to dry brushing. Now this is how I do the weathering on the vehicles, and the reason I did the matte varnish on these ones first was so that the dry brushing would have something to stick to. The smooth finish of the models as they are out of the box makes weathering them a bit difficult, so I do the varnish first. And you can see the dry brushing effect is grabbing quite nicely onto the varnish, and there's a couple of spots here and there that you can correct just by rubbing the acrylic paint with a cocktail stick, and it just takes the edge off some of the areas that are perhaps a little bit too intense. But you can see the effect's quite good, so just make sure there's a good minimal level of paint on the brush and just work your way around the various models, and you can see that it creates a nice used effect. I'll be adding a driver to this truck, but as you can see, as the driver is out of the box, he's a bit big and he doesn't really fit in the driver's seat. So unfortunately for him, I'm going to have to get the knife out and cut his legs off. But it's the only way he's going to get into this truck. And there you can see he fits quite nicely now. I glue the figures into the seats with rocket card glue. It's a nice glue that goes off fairly quickly. It works well for this application. And there's the finished truck. I think you'll agree it looks quite a bit more realistic than it did when it came out of the box. It's got a driver, the shine has been taken off of the paint, the wheels and the body have been weathered, and it looks nice and used. Done the same thing on the Transit, weathered the wheels using the dry brushing method and just made it generally look used. And you can see also painting those extra black bits around the windows has made a big difference. I've added two figures to the interior of the Volvo, but I've not weathered the vehicle as I wanted it to look nice and clean. The varnish made a big difference on the Ford Sierras. On the right you can see how it is out of the box, and on the left it looks much more convincing. And on the Astras, the extra painting of the window rubbers has made a big difference to the car's appearance, and you can see the difference as well of adding a driver. So whilst the cars that I repainted continue to dry, I'm continuing to add weathering and painting effects to those that I varnished earlier in the video. So on this Granada you can see the shiny paint has been dulled down, and I'm now proceeding to paint one of the front wings a different colour to simulate as though it's been replaced at some point, either due to accident damage or corrosion. This was something that was quite common back in the day. A lot of people would have done this to keep their cars on the road. These days it's almost completely died out. You don't often see cars with different coloured panels, but back in the 70s and 80s, and to an extent the 90s, it was very common to see the odd vehicle here and there with different coloured panels. So once the wings dry, I start dry brushing with the black paint. Again, black acrylic paint, and the dry brushing brings out some of the lines on the car a little better and just gives that extra layer of dirt and realism to make the car look nice and used. This Granada, having had a wing changed, is also going to be made fairly grubby, as though it's not been cared for too much in its life, and I'll be also adding some various other effects, such as some rust. Granada's quite renowned for rusting along the front edge of the bonnet, so a little bit of black paint and brown paint on a cocktail stick mixed together just creates some little rusty areas, and I'm just stippling these around the car on the bottom of the seat posts where the drainage on these is quite poor, along the edge of the bonnet, bottoms of doors and sills, various panels here and there. And I'll also be doing that to some other cars as well, just to create that little bit of interest in the queue of traffic on the layout. Also paint the wheels, and there's the finished car. And you can see it's a nice, interesting thing to look at now. Looks uncared for, looks near the end of its life, and just creates that bit of interest. The cars I repainted earlier have now dried, so the next thing to do is, using the same methods that you've seen earlier in the video, is to paint all the various little details back on. This is very time consuming and can be quite fiddly, but take your time and it will look reasonably good. You'll never quite replicate the original printed finish, but you can get fairly close, as you can see here. So after the details have dried, I give the cars another shot of matte varnish just to take the shine away from any of the bits of chrome and black that I've added, and I also move on to adding the various figures to the interior, making sure that I add a few extra figures here and there. And then finally, all that remains is to put the cars back together and to weather them using these same methods I've shown you earlier on in the video, and then they can go back on the layout. So there you go, The cars, vans and trucks have now been detailed and weathered and repainted. Some of them are clean, some of them are dirty, some of them are rusty, some of them have been mended with different coloured panels from other cars. Some of them have got people in them, some of them are parked up, all kinds of variations. So it makes a real nice difference, gives that layout that real sort of period 80s feel that I was going for. But you can see the difference there, just how much nicer they look compared to how they would have done when they just came straight out of the box. So it's a nice little side project to do. And this is by no means a hard and fast rule on exactly what to do. There's various things I haven't touched on, such as changing bits of trim on various vehicles to make them a lower spec version of the same car. You can add little blobs of paint on the windscreen to show stickers and tats discs and dealer logos. And you can add wing mirrors to cars that don't have them. A lot of the models don't have any wing mirrors, so that's something I'll address in the future. And there's all kinds of other bits and pieces you can do as well. You could add, say, a trailer or make yourself your own little caravan or whatever. So I hope this video has given you a few hints and tips. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will be back as soon as I can with another video. I'm doing my best to get the videos done, but I am very busy both at work and on various other projects at the moment, so it's been taking a while to get these videos made, but I am still here.